Hey everybody, Jules here. Before we get going, this video is brought to you by Omaze, but more about them in a bit.
The most satisfying gaming moment often comes when you triumph over an exceptionally difficult boss. Naturally then, the harder your opponent is, the more satisfaction that you feel after you win. But there are some times that developers have gone too far with this idea, creating bosses that are pretty much invincible. With that in mind then, I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video game bosses that are almost impossible to beat. Number 10, Through the Fire and Flames, Guitar Hero 3. There is no question that Through the Fire and Flames is the hardest section in Guitar Hero 3 Legends of Rock. It's just so difficult to perform that most players can't even complete the first 5% of Dragon Force's iconic melody. Hell, music legends like Jimi Hendrix and Slash would balk at the requirements needed to play even a fraction of this 7-minute tune. Through the Fire and Flames contains a preposterous 3,722 notes, meaning you have to hit 26.6 notes per second. And they come at you so quick that your brain can barely have time to process them, nor can your fingers deal with that much multitasking. There are so many green notes in the intro especially that many players just rely on placing a rubber band around the green button to get past this segment. Some might rope a friend in to press the green button accordingly while the player focuses on hitting the other notes, and you know a boss is unfair when it inspires players to devise elaborate methods to cheat. Even though there have been many rock-hard rock songs in the sequels, Through the Fire and Flames is still the toughest of the lot. Number 9, MAMABACK, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. Because the Dead Ops arcade maps were so popular in COD Black Ops, it was no surprise when the feature returned in Black Ops Cold War. However, players were surprised to learn the campaign this time centered around their squad facing a bespectacled gorilla called MAMABACK. Even though it sounds like a joke, few players have managed to actually reach this boss, not to mention actually defeat her. And that's because this campaign requires players to work through a whopping 64 rounds, which already takes around 3 to 4 hours. Then there's MAMABACK herself. Not only is this tyrannical ape astoundingly fast and brutal, but she picks up any treasure, weapons, and items nearby, robbing you of the very resources that you need to actually defeat her. And although only a handful have actually reached this boss, even fewer have gone any further. And unfortunately, you only receive the trophy for this challenge if you complete all 64 rounds and beat MAMABACK in one go. Unsurprisingly, barely anyone has claimed this trophy thanks to that darned gorilla. Number 8, JINPACHI, Tekken 5. Most Tekken games conclude with a showdown with a member of the Mishima family. Ironically, the nicest Mishima, JINPACHI, is also the most nightmarish of the bunch. Despite being a kind-hearted man, JINPACHI turned evil after being corrupted by a dark spirit. Although Tekken is no stranger to tough bosses, JINPACHI is the only one who actually cheats. This astoundingly bearded villain performs spam attacks, uninterruptible combos, and of course, insta-kills. So before you're back on your feet, the muscular Santa pummels you again, forcing you to spend most of the brawl just sitting on the floor. And even if you do somehow manage to hit JINPACHI with a combo, your rival can actually interrupt it whenever he wants, stunning you again into submission. You can't keep your distance either, since JINPACHI can use astral projection to propel himself forward. So no matter how far away you are, you can be at JINPACHI's mercy in literally like less than a second. Also, if you're one of those gamers who completes beat-em-ups with every character, you might want to reconsider for Tekken 5. As if you do emerge triumphant against this guy a couple of times, trying to fight him with all 32 combatants will just drive you crazy. Number 7, The FUME Knight, Dark Souls 2. According to stats collected by From Software, 4 of the 5 hardest bosses in Dark Souls 2 can be found in the DLC Crown of the Old Iron King. And even though many struggled with the Squalid Queen and the Slumbering Dragon, players had the most difficulty with the FUME Knight. This towering warrior boasts an absolutely nightmarish 93% failure rate, which is higher than any other enemy in the game. Even though you'll be instinctively cautious of the knight's gargantuan blade, you actually have to watch out for his longsword, since he can lunge at you with it from any angle. Unfortunately, any dodging or blocking strategy goes out the window when the FUME Knight imbues his greatsword with magic. With his enchanted blade, the malevolent warrior can break through your shielding without basically any effort and just decimate your health bar. So if you were disappointed that this sequel's difficulty didn't match its reputation, then this guy will absolutely set things straight.
So earlier on we mentioned that we were once again partnering up with our good friends over at Omaze, who we absolutely love working with because they help non-profits all around the world achieve their goals and give you, the people at home, the chance to win fantastic prizes. And today you, yes you, my friend, listening to this video, have the chance to win a custom Tesla Model S Apex, all while supporting a great cause. This time around, the Peterson Automotive Museum, who's a non-profit organization dedicated to exploring the effects automobiles have had on global life and culture. And by taking part in this competition, you will help continue education programs as well as aid the creation of new exhibitions and community events. All you got to do is just go to omaze.com/WCG to enter. But anyway, the custom Tesla Model S Apex, which is a car that is so utterly beautiful it makes the Mona Lisa look like a snotty tissue. Not only does this thing pump out 1,020 brake horsepower from its 3 electric motors, but it will hit that sweet 0 to 60 in just 1.99 seconds, and let you push things all the way up to 200 miles per hour as its top speed. But here's the thing, let's just say that you've won the Tesla, you're inside it, you're blitzing across the highway, and you suddenly think to yourself, oh wait a minute, this is an electric car, what's the range in this? Am I going to get back in time? Well, fret not, because this has a 396-mile range. Adding to this, you've got carbon ceramic brakes, a panoramic sunroof, 21-inch custom wheels, and a Ciano Red UPX von Holzhausen bamboo leather interior. All of this in a package that is worth nearly $198,000. Now that's some walking around money, or in this case, sitting down money in your Tesla Model S Apex that you just won through this competition. So for your chance to win a custom Tesla Model S Apex, go to omaze.com/WCG and enter now. Donations support the amazing work of the Peterson Automotive Museum. In the meantime, best of luck. Now back to the video.
Number 6, Absolute Radiance Hollow Knight's Godmaster mode. As difficult as Hollow Knight is, its Godmaster DLC is absolutely something else. Even if you think you're a pro at this Metroidvania title, you'll be shaking in your boots after going one round against the final boss of this add-on, Absolute Radiance. Essentially a beefed up version of the already stupidly difficult secret final boss in the main game. Only the most hardcore of hardcore players will be able to take this being on. Blasting the player with an array of swords, walls of light, and destructive orbs. While you do your best to dodge these projectiles, you have to keep an eye on where you step, since Absolute Radiance can summon spikes from the floor at any given moment. Like all hated bosses, there are multiple stages to fighting this deity, and with every succeeding phase, Radiance moves more sporadically and churns out projectiles even more fervently than a previous counterpart. You'll definitely spend sections of the brawl not even trying to hit this boss because you'll be too busy avoiding their barrage of attacks. Worse still, there are less platforms to land on as the battle progresses, which means you have to think about platforming while you're trying to deal damage. Absolute Radiance is the toughest kind of enemy because you only need to make one mistake to pop your clogs. Number 5, Cthulhu World of Warcraft. When World of Warcraft players first encountered Cthulhu, they were blown away by the old god's outrageous difficulty. No matter how intricate and strategic groups were in their raids, they just couldn't fell the Lovecraftian creature. And over time, it became clear that this boss wasn't just difficult, he was actually, without a shred of exaggeration, genuinely undefeatable. Even though the phrase impossible boss is thrown around all too often, including in this list perhaps, this bulbous monstrosity definitely fits the bill to a T. Simply put, there isn't enough time for any raid to destroy this guy's tentacles before the Cthulhu-inspired beast wipes them out. And since mana is incredibly limited, players have no effective means to regenerate lost health. Also, there was a glitch at one point that Cthulhu could hit players with his tentacles even after he devoured them, causing them to suffer far more damage than they should have received. After Blizzard received complaints for months over this issue, they finally patched WoW so the boss's defeat was more feasible. And wouldn't you know it, mere hours after this patch went through, a guild destroyed the infernal boss for the first time, allowing the WoW community to believe a collective sigh of relief. Number 4, MALENIA Elden Ring. The hardest boss in Elden Ring is not up for debate. When Reset Era made a poll based on the game's toughest enemies, Malenia, Blade of Mikola, received 80% of the votes, and just for context, Radagon and the Elden Beast, who ranked second, only received 11% of the votes. After facing this one-armed Valkyrie for a couple of seconds as well, it's easy to see why she's From Software's most infamous foe. Malenia has a versatile range of attacks which are swift, merciless, and mostly untelegraphed. Her most devastating attacks can take off 1,500 damage, while her healing magic recovers the same amount. So no matter what guards you have, it won't really matter, since your rival can just shatter them with ease, or simply use those free hits to recharge her health. At least after she does fall to the ground though, you can pat yourself on the back knowing that you vanquished one of the hardest— oh wait, she's not done, is she? No, as soon as you think you've beat Malenia, she transforms into the Goddess of Rot, initiating the second and much harder phase of the fight. In her new form, Malenia blankets the battlefield with petals, exposing you to the Scarlet Rot, and not only does she perform that annoying jump kick attack more often, but she executes new combo extensions and cancels your move. Solo or teaming up, Malenia is just piss hard. Number 3, Absolute Virtue of Final Fantasy XI. Being an MMORPG, there are intervals in Final Fantasy XI where you can take part in raid bosses, meaning, as we've established, you can partner up with other players to fight a super powerful enemy. But if you intend to battle Absolute Virtue, you better cancel your plans for the next day or two, and that's not an exaggeration either. In fact, some raiders spent over 30 hours fighting this notorious monster, and they still couldn't beat him. When the developers noticed that a grand total of 0 people had defeated Absolute Virtue in 3 years, they finally decided to nerf the Godling's power. Even in his lesser state though, Virtue is still a nightmare to face. Once his health gets down to 59%, he summons twice as many wyverns and boosts all of his stats, making the second half of the fight somehow 10 times harder. And even worse, just when you think you're getting somewhere, Virtue performs a benediction, which restores half of his health. And this just makes the last hour or two that you might have spent coordinating your attacks just completely pointless. Since Absolute Virtue can perform this enchantment multiple times as well, you can understand why so few gamers have actually beaten him, even after his difficulty was toned down. Number 2, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Saying Mike Tyson from Punch-Out is overpowered doesn't do it justice at all. Without exaggerating, defeating Mike Tyson in Punch-Out is probably harder than beating the actual Mike Tyson in a real life, whether now or in his prime. If the heavyweight champion uppercuts Little Mac in the first round, your next stop is the canvas. And even though Iron Mike's uppercuts get weaker in the following rounds, they actually come faster and more sporadically through the brawl. Likewise, while there's a pattern to Tyson's moves, they're not set in stone, meaning you have to rely on timing rather than memorization. Because Tyson barely telegraphs his attacks, you'll need the reflexes of the Flash, Superman, and Neo combined to survive being in the ring with the champ. The only saving grace to this fight is the ability to knock Tyson down instantly if you hit him while he's blinking. Too bad you'll be left wide open if you mistime this moment though, allowing the boxing legend and hangover star to pound you into the floor. Also, if Tyson beats you, which he definitely will, you can't just try again. When you get KO'd, you go right back to the start of the game, and if you want a rematch with Tyson, you'll have to face the previous 13 opponents all over again. No thank you. Number 1, Queen Larsa Bug Princess Duo. Bullet hell shooters are regarded as one of the hardest genres in gaming, since, as the name suggests, the screen is regularly filled with hundreds of enemy projectiles which your character must avoid. However, no game in this genre comes quite close to matching the difficulty of Bug Princess Duo. As hard as the game is, the skill required to vanquish the antagonist, Queen Larsa, is pretty much unprecedented. Throughout the fight, the deranged regent unleashes hundreds of lethal lasers in every direction at any one time. Although it's a pretty uncreative tactic, the reason why it's so devastating is because Larsa never lets up. There isn't a single moment where the screen isn't littered with deadly projectiles, and never in the history of gaming has the player had to watch out for so many obstacles at once. Hell, it gets so overwhelming for most gamers that your eyes just can't focus on where you even are, which will result in your immediate death. Because the Queen literally launches millions of lasers at you, you might think this battle is genuinely unbeatable. And while that's not true, it is very, 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 very hard. So that's our list. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Did you have trouble with these impossible bosses? And are there any other ridiculous ones I missed off here? Let me know, and while you're down there, could you please give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to WhatCulture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't though, I've been Josh. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.